Let's talk about the military. The Kamala Harris, Walz, plans for the military, experience with the military, and probably because of my history, the military is very, very close to me. I was in the Marines for just 4 years, but I loved it. And as a child, I loved it. I used to read books. I consume every bit of it I possibly could. Maybe this is just a guy thing. Maybe it's a patriotism thing. I don't know what it is, but I have always had such admiration for the men who put on a uniform and go fight and die for countries. And watching what the American communist has done and will continue to do in the future to our military sickens me, angers me. Look, it creates a lot of emotions in me, and none of them are good. Look, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, they might very well finish off a military that has been so wonderful for so long, and it's in so much trouble now. And remember Afghanistan? I know you remember, but it's just not something that I can get out of my mind. I'll be honest with you, it's not just something I say for TV or radio. I'll have moments. I had one this past weekend. I'll have moments where it just hits me and it hurts. I'll think about it again. And it's not just the way we left. We yanked our troops out of there without a good plan. There was a way to get out the right way. Instead, the Biden administration, they wanted something to celebrate on the anniversary of 9/11. They wanted a bump in the polls. So they said, hey, everyone leave. Everyone just packed up and left. And then they opened up the jail that was at Bagram Air Base and let out a bunch of ISIS guys, a bunch of terrorists, okay? Just remember that little tidbit. We leave. Of course, the country collapses almost immediately, which that in and of itself is an indictment on what we were doing for 20 years. Remember, they told us the mission was to build up Afghanistan's security forces so they would be strong enough and ready to oppose the Taliban so we could leave, so they could handle their own security. And we spent 20 years allegedly doing that. And then we pull out, and those security forces collapse immediately, and all that gear we gave them, M16s, Humvees, Blackhawks, immediately fall into the hand of the Taliban. The country's collapsing. The Biden-Harris administration freaks out. They realize this looks bad, so they send our guys back to secure a civilian airport without the proper facilities at all. And allegedly, one of those guys we let out of the jail in Bagram shows up with a suicide vest, vaporizes 13 of our warriors. And in response to that, we sent a Reaper drone to take out 10 completely innocent civilians, 6 of them children. And after that, the defense secretary said, no regrets, baby.
Do you have regrets about the withdrawal from Afghanistan?
I support the president's decision.
Do you have regrets about their withdrawal or how the withdrawal occurred from Afghanistan that cost the lives of 13 of our service members?
I don't have any regrets.
No regrets. Well, there are a lot of people who never get to see their son or daughter again, and they have lots of regrets. And our military used to be full of men of honor who, even if they failed, didn't even have to be malicious. Even if they failed, they would resign out of a sense of honor and duty. No more. Those days are gone. And let's talk about Kamala Harris, as long as we're on the subject here. Because back when she thought it was going to be popular, she couldn't wait to run to the camera. I was the last one in the room.
President Biden always said that he wants you to be the last person in the room, particularly for big decisions, just as he was for President Obama. He just made a really big decision, Afghanistan.
Yes.
Were you the last person in the room?
Yes.
And you feel comfortable?
I do.
Couldn't wait to run to the cameras and accept some credit back when she thought it was going to be popular. And look, this is the thing about Dome that we've talked about so much. She's a complete blank slate. she's whatever she needs to be, says whatever she needs to say on any given day. And I know what you're saying, Jesse, that's every politician. And to a degree, you're correct, but there's never been anyone like her. That's the reason she's all over the place on every issue. It's the reason she'll say the sky is green one day, blue the next day. She's completely lost. She has no real core belief system outside of ambition, outside of getting elected. And so she'll just randomly go vomit things out there to the camera like ceasefire in Gaza.
So to everyone who has been calling for a ceasefire and to everyone who yearns for peace, I see you and I hear you. Let's get the deal done so we can get a ceasefire to end the war.
Yeah, but she doesn't know anything about the war. And it comes back to the military, to military personnel. If elected, she will be the commander-in-chief. Tim Walz will be the vice president. And she doesn't know anything about anything. This is a roughly 60-year-old woman who knows nothing about nothing because none of her life has been dedicated to learning anything or being good at anything at all. Her entire life is saying and doing whatever and whoever she needed to get elected. And so now when this woman is asked basic questions like about Ukraine, she sounds like a toddler.
So Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong.
And listen, you can call her dumb, call her whatever you want. These are the people who lead the Democrat Party now. Because all that matters to them is the gender, or race, or whatever it may be, because merit isn't even considered anymore. We end up with these morons in huge positions of power gutting this country like a fish. And let's set Harris aside and let's talk some more about Tim Walz. Stealing Valor is a huge, huge deal. I want you to be real clear about this. It's not what kind of service you did. Different people serve in different ways. You know, some guys are Green Berets for 30 years, taking lives, getting shot at, blood and guts and all those things. Some people do 25 years as a mechanic in the Air Force, and both service is valuable. Your service is valuable no matter how you chose to serve or how long you chose to serve. That's never a problem. The huge problem is when you claim you did something that you absolutely did not do. Saying things like this is a really, really, really big deal.
Hope woke up like many of you did 5 weeks ago and said, Dad, you're the only person I know who's in elected office. You need to stop what's happening with this. I'll take my kick in the butt for the NRA. I spent 25 years in the Army and I hunt. And I gave the money back, and I'll tell you what I have been doing. I've been voting for common sense legislation that protects the Second Amendment, but we can do background checks. We can do CDC research. We can make sure we don't have reciprocal carry among states, and we can make sure that those weapons of war that I carried in war is the only place where those weapons are at.
When asked about it, Kamala Harris's campaign said he misspoke, but he didn't misspeak. He lied. He's now been caught on video. I don't know how many times. I don't know how many hours of old video has been dragged up at this point, talking about Walz, my service in Afghanistan, carried a weapon in war. He ran political campaign ads talking about it. And that is a complete and utter disgrace to claim the valor of men who did fight in war when not only he didn't go, his unit was supposed to go, and he straight up bailed on his men so he could go be in Congress. This is not a small deal. It's a huge deal. And this guy potentially is the next vice president of the United States of America, which brings me back to our military. I am extremely concerned. I am extremely concerned. If things remained just as they are now, with the rot we see, with the flag officer corps, the generals, admirals, with the rot we see at the military academies, minoring in diversity and crap like that, if things stayed just as they are now, I would be very, very concerned about the future of our services. Could you imagine if Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are given 4 more years to take this idiocy and lunacy and spread it throughout our troops? Man. All right. All that may have made you uncomfortable, but I am right. Speaking of Tim Walz, we have somebody who was in his battalion. Want to hear from them? Next. This is something you've heard me yell about before on the show because it is something that means so much to me. I have a hard time getting it through to civilians what a sergeant major, what a first sergeant, what these positions mean to you as a young enlisted man. They are father figures. And Tim Walz has not only lied repeatedly about his service, he just straight up bailed on his guys right before they went into Iraq at a time when it was ugly over there. That is such horrific cowardice. I couldn't even share with you the things my Marine brothers are sharing with me by text message, how much we despise this human being. Joining me now, Tom Behrens, retired Command Sergeant Major for the Minnesota National Guard, took Walz's place as Command Sergeant Major. Okay, Sergeant Major, before we get into everything about Walz, I want to discuss you. I want to discuss what a Command Sergeant Major even does, because I certainly never made it up to that rank. Would you please explain?
Well, when you get to that position, you basically are, you're selected by the whole bunch of, higher ranking people above you, lots of Command Sergeant Majors that are in, major commands, brigade level, state level, division level. And you're literally the senior enlisted advisor to the colonel. So, I mean, the colonel and you're like man and wife at that point. I mean, he's the person that's more or less running the business, and you're like the foreman that's out on the floor. And all the 500 soldiers. I mean, the lowest amount of people you have under you as a Command Sergeant Major is 500. I mean, you can go to brigade and have 3,000. You can be a division Command Sergeant Major and have 10, 12,000. I mean, we even have a United States Army Command Sergeant Major that he wears 2 stars in the middle of his rank, and he's over and above the whole damn United States. I mean, this is a huge rank, and you're basically the senior enlisted person for the whole battalion, and all your first sergeants look up to you. You're in charge of all the promotions, the promotion boards that take place of all the NCOs out there from E5 on up. I mean, you're the father figure, the senior man. I mean, you're the wise man on top of the damn mountain at that point.
Now, let's talk about Tim Walz. Not that I'm glad your men had you and not him, but why was it you and not Tim Walz who was Command Sergeant Major as your unit deployed to Iraq?
Well, he turned tail and ran. I mean, gunfire was going on in Iraq, and he basically was like, "Okay, there's gunfire there. I stopped. I mean, I did. He stopped, turned around, and ran the other direction. I mean, when the Twin Towers were born, basically the firefighters were all going in that direction, and he went the other damn way down the street because he had better. He felt he was more important running for Congress, and we all had things that we wanted to do at home. I mean, I had a young family at that point. Every soldier out there had something that they would have, been able to say, "Hey, I want to go to the beach and not go on this deployment." But he had this feeling that whatever it was, I don't know if it was pure cowardice at that point, or if he just determined that, well, if I go there, I'm probably not going to be worth it because I'm a soldier. I don't know what the heck his feeling was, but the bottom line is he knew he was going, and he left.
What was that deployment like for you and your men?
It was, started off kind of slow. I mean, I landed in Kuwait on April Fool's Day, of all ironic things in the military. But we went up into, went from Kuwait up into Iraq, in April, and then, things were relatively calm. But then, we lost a couple of people by us. One soldier with an explosively formed projectile, which was manufactured by Iran, and we lost Kyle Miller, in late June, up north with a old style artillery round in the ground, in the pavement. But this EFP was a new thing, and then we got fired on in July with 81 millimeter mortars that were stamped 2006 on the bottom of it. It was like, well, this is not old Saddam that he's stockpiled. This is new manufactured stuff. And that was all Iranian mortars. I mean, we ended up bringing an Iranian mortar that we captured home and got it in the Camp Ripley Museum in Minnesota because, we kept on their ass. We found, where they were shooting from, and we actually captured it and had the Iraqi government gift it back to us. But I mean, in our area, it was all Iranian stuff. And that Soleimani that Trump took out, he was the architect of all the in our area. They were well-trained bad dudes down there, and they sent the Iraqis across the border, and they came back and took their, used their new techniques on us. It was a hellhole.
Yeah, that was a bad time to be there. So you have spoken about this publicly before, but were, ignored, brushed aside? This is not the first time you've come out and spoken about this.
No, I brought it out in 2018 when he ran for governor because I had actually wrote a letter to him in 2016, and when he was in Congress, and I thanked him for his service, and I said, thanks for all the things you're doing on the Veterans Committee, but I said, on the other hand, please refrain from using Command Sergeant Major rank, because he used that in a speech dedicating a Veterans Memorial down in his district, and it was the same that he's been doing here, just Command Sergeant Major this, I'm that, whatever, tooting his horn. And I was just like, I had enough of it. So I basically sent him that letter, respectfully asked him to cease and desist doing it, because I said, you didn't earn the rank. You don't deserve to even say that you can say that you're in that position for a few months, like 6 weekend drills, and that's what you served as an acting Command Sergeant Major for a little while, but the minute you walked out the door, I mean, that was stripped of you because you failed.
What do the other people in the battalion think about what Walz did?
Well, that's kind of funny now. I coined the phrase a couple of days ago that the National Guard's been activated in Minnesota now, but it's not the way Tim Walz thought it was going to be, because these people are coming out of the woodwork now. Everybody is. I mean, it's about like you shaking your head there. You're pissed. And these people are too now. I mean, there's a couple of them that, they'll fall on the sword for him all the way to the end, I think. But I would say 98, 99% of the soldiers I talk to out here, they're from all the way from the top down to the bottom. And I haven't had any super high ranking anybody, because they're kind of, they get political at general level. And, but I've got full bird colonels and, lots of CSMs out there that are, and the general people out there, they're just like ecstatic that this is went on, or it's going on now, because they've just listened to this guy lie so long, they're sick of it.
Good. I'm glad you guys are at least getting some public satisfaction over it. Sergeant Major, thank you, sir. I appreciate you very much. All right. Can you imagine what our military will look like after 4 years of Harris and Walz? It's already getting bad in there. Can you imagine what these people will do? Let's talk to Jason Nelson about exactly that next.
These guys are even attacking me for my record of service.
Tim Walz, we're going to get back to Kamala Harris in a few, but I want to talk to Jason about this in a moment. Jason Nelson joins me, U.S. Army, Marine Corps veteran. Jason, we'll get to actually the stolen valor portion of the Tim Walz thing that seems to be grinding so many people's gears, certainly veteran friends of mine. But there's another thing that's bothering them that's not being talked about as much, bailing on your guys as the would-be command sergeant major right before they leave for Iraq to run for Congress. That is just, it is not done. I mean, I don't know how many stories I have of guys staying in who didn't even want to stay in so they could go back with their brothers and look out for them. It just floors me that somebody could be so much of a scumbag.
Yeah, let's get past the stolen valor. That's very obvious. And to me, that even if they start covering up the slip of the tongues, whatever, let's talk about training cycles. I don't think many people understand, because there's lots of top cover being run for him and saying, hey, you wouldn't have known about this, or the official deployment order didn't come out. I was a training NCO, senior staff NCO, at one point in one battalion, and I can tell you right now, there's a 4-year training cycle. Jesse, you know about this. You're used to this. It's a 4-year training cycle that spins up a unit and makes them deployable. And when you fall into your deployable window, you are well aware of that, because you're required to raise the metrics of your unit. There is no question that a National Guard unit would know well in advance, probably about 2 years in advance, that the warrant would be sent out. They would know, because they would need to begin training and certifying. They wouldn't necessarily be running. It was an artillery unit. They wouldn't necessarily be doing artillery. As you're well aware, they could be doing base security. They could be doing route clearance patrol. And he was well aware of this, and he even commented on it. So when you talk about stolen valor, yeah, that upsets me a lot, right? But when you talk about this mission, what revolves around that stolen valor, why people started exploring how he might have retired as a command sergeant major when he should have been a master sergeant. But when they started digging into that, and you found out that he even said, I'm not going to leave my boys, and then left his boys, there's no excuse for that. As a matter of fact, he could have been elected to Congress and still been out there. And that we know many other people who have served honorably while still standing in the halls of Congress. So there's no excuse here. And it is far worse than stolen valor, especially when we sit on the precipice of an administration that we know will send ground troops into Ukraine. This is a man that couldn't and wouldn't deploy.
Oh, of course they will. And just to clarify what Jason just said, he put it pretty bluntly. You know, if you're in a unit, we knew, look, I was a PFC, I was a private when I got to the fleet. You knew in a year you were going to Okinawa for 6 months. You knew while you were there. You knew what training cycle you were going to do. You knew when you were going to do mountain warfare training. We knew when you had to do CAX, that's a desert warfare op. You always knew. So he knew. And he just straight up bailed. And it's not like he just bailed as a normal dude. That would be bad too. I've tried to explain this as best I can, Jason, what a senior staff NCO means for the troops, that this is a father figure to the troops. I still talk to mine, brother.
I would go so far as to, and I don't mean to use this term in any way other than what it sounds like. They're the mother figure of the unit. They're the person that provides your beans, your bullets. They're the person that is supposed to have a direct eye on every enlisted member, to know when to pull them off the line, to know when they need a care package from home, especially to understand the TTPs, that's the troop training procedures, to understand the standard operating procedures that are going to be integrated throughout the unit, integrated with other units that are existing. There are so many things that the command sergeant major is responsible for, and primarily it is to keep those troops alive. That's not the commander's job. The commander's job is to execute the mission and to make sure that that mission is completed at all costs and at minimal risk if possible. But the command sergeant major, they're there to keep you alive. They're there to make sure that you are an effective fighting unit and to bail at such a critical time. When you knew that the promotion itself was dependent on you going on this deployment, this person took this responsibility. That's why I call him Tim Walz. I don't care what anyone else says. This is not a man who is should be in any position. And we know how Democrats love to have people in the room. Kamala Harris, last person out of the room, right? When they did the withdrawal from Afghanistan, that absolute debacle. This man is going to be inside the Situation Room. This man is going to be making decisions, going to be a part of the decision-making process when it comes to putting troops on the ground. And this is a man who walked away at the one critical time in which he would be needed, when he would be most at risk, and when his troops would need to keep them alive. He walked away.
God, it's so terrible. And speaking of the one in the room making the decisions, if God forbid these two actually win the elections, Dome will be the one making that call. And there couldn't be anybody with less regard for anything when it comes to the military. You mentioned boots on the ground in Ukraine. These people will send your sons and now daughters, sadly, to fight and die anywhere. They don't care.
Well, more importantly than sending them over there is how ill prepared they will be. We've seen under the Biden regime what military preparedness looks like. It involves, I think, TikTok videos and performing surgeries on people that will make them non-deployable. The number one purpose of having a reserve and National Guard is to keep them deployable in support of missions that you need, that the active duty, remember, they already have a wide scope of missions. They have the same training cycles and spin-ups. They can't, that's why a fleet, for example, carrier group moves in and out of an area. So you're talking about a readiness issue, and we have troops right now that are going to get slaughtered. I hate to put it that way, but if my brothers and sisters that I left behind that were senior staff and COs, plenty of officers that I now fear for their lives based on the capacity of our military to even fight in a war, whether it be DEI policies or as when I was in, you spend more time learning about your touchy-feely feelings than you do training on your actual primary weapon system. That's a fact. I can actually pull the hours and show you where your troops spend more time learning how not to insult each other than they actually do learning how to fight war. And that is absolutely terrifying in the fact that we're headed for a thermonuclear war right now.
Yeah, in case anybody doubts anything Jason just said, do I need to remind you what the military recruiting ads look like today? Before I play the video for you, I just want you to know when I grew up as a young man admiring these people, reading books about them, what if I could be a Marine one day? Every Marine Corps ad was about how freaking miserable it was going to be and how hard it was going to be, and we won't promise you a rose garden. And this is what the ads are today.
This is the story of a soldier who operates your nation's Patriot missile defense systems. It begins in California, with a little girl raised by two moms. I also marched for equality. I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age. Sure, I'd spent my life around inspiring women, but what had I really achieved on my own? One of my sorority sisters was studying.
Yeah, Jason, I don't think a lot of people understand that we had over 400,000 mental casualties during World War II. Young men, strong men from good families in a strong culture. Combat shattered them. What in the world would happen to a military full of that crap if combat happened?
We've talked about this before, Jesse, and we're talking about a society right now that has no concept of what the Blitz would look like in real life on TikTok or on X or wherever. They have no concept of what they even look at Gaza and try to wrap their heads around what that third world crap hellhole run by, a bunch of terrorists looks like when it's been bombed. They can't even conceive of what it would look like to see a first world nation destroyed. They can't conceive of what it would be like to see their friend bleed out, to have to carry a child that's bleeding out, try and get an evac and find out there's limited evac in that area, and you may have to watch a child die in your arms. They don't know what any of that's like. And for them being this far removed from it, who are those ads trying to bring in? I have no idea. There's not a person there that I would want to sit in a fighting hole next to and have them say, the reason I joined was because I watched that whole cartoon about two moms. That is absolutely not the kind of person that you want. I remember when I was recruited, I remember what it took. It was simple little wooden blocks in that Marine Corps recruiting office. And they said, what do you want more of? What do you want to be challenged as a person? And then they told me how the Marine Corps would provide that to me if I earned it. And, I had to work my tail off, and I was not a strong young man. I had to work my tail off to get through that, to get through Marine combat training, to go through SOC qualifications on a MU, then to move back and move into Army special operations that are used to SOC. These were all challenges that I sought. They were the things that made me the man I am today. And no matter how broken I am after 20 years of service, I can sit here, 19 and a half years of service, because I want to be specific. The fact is, This is not who we're recruiting right now. We are recruiting weak-minded individuals who believe it's all about them. And you know what? It will be all about you when your partner fails you in the fighting hole and you're sitting there holding your own guts. And I'm sorry if you can't handle that, but that's the reality of war. That's what's coming for them. And this is not the fighting force that we have going out there today that's going to be ready to absorb that. They are just going to be bullet sponges at this point. And it is horrific. And it is tragic, and we need to fix that in this election.
Well, you sure do. You thought you were mad when 13 Marines, sailors, and soldiers were blowing up at Abbey Gate. Wait until that's 1,300 in a day because something goes wrong. Jason, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you very much. All right. We're still not done. Hang on.
On the issue of Afghanistan. And to that end, we have seen a successful drawdown of the embassy.
Successful drawdown of the embassy. Like I've been ranting about endlessly, it just steams me to no end that 20 years of sacrifice and blood and service, people fighting, dying, men, women fighting, dying, being maimed over there. And these people just callously threw it away like it was nothing and then celebrated it like it was a win. It just freaking irks me. I was never there, though. I did the Iraq thing. I didn't have to go to Afghanistan. Amber Smith, I believe she did. Amber Smith joins us now. She's an author of a book you really need to pick up if you want to know what's happening to our military from the inside. It's called Unfit to Fight. Amber, 20 years. And all those lives lost in misery and blood, and these people, not just Democrats, Republicans, Democrats, our military leaders, just threw it all away, and it sickens me.
It's disgusting, that talking point that you have seen, time and time again from senior administration officials, from Kamala Harris, from Joe Biden, who continue to, the two-liners that they paid somebody to come up with, that somehow they are going to use some crisis communications technique and try to spin it as if it was some sort of a success, when it wasn't just an embarrassment for our nation on a world stage where our adversaries got a front row seat to the weakest leadership that we have ever had. It is the biggest foreign policy disaster of a decision that we have seen in our nation's history, not just with this administration, but throughout our history. We are at the 3-year anniversary of when the Taliban rolled in and easily took Kabul, despite our Western and U.S. intelligence for weeks and months ahead of time saying otherwise, including the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Milley, saying that there was no way that the Taliban was going to take control of Kabul, which we know easily 3 years ago they did, and led to the horrific images that we saw of, Afghans falling out of the sky, babies being thrown over Constantina Wire, and 13 Americans being killed from an ISIS suicide bomber. It is no clearer of how big of a foreign policy disaster this was than yesterday, the Taliban holding a military parade with $85 billion worth of American equipment that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden left behind to be given to the hands of the Taliban when they took control of the nation, and how many of those different types of equipment, we're talking helicopters, MRAPs, Humvees, ammunition, uniforms, that was sold to our adversaries, to terrorist organizations that will be used against us. And yesterday it was on full display. They had diplomats there from China, from Iran, just throwing it in our face. The 20 years of, like you mentioned, blood, treasure, what American service members fought for and sacrificed for.
Amber, could you explain to people who don't quite get it, how could all those generals, how could all those intelligence services, how could they all be so wrong? Why did it fall so quickly? It was immediate. We were supposedly training these security forces so they could stand up on their own 2 feet, and they just laid down like the Italian Navy. Can you explain what happened?
So it's a lack of accountability culture that has been allowed to fester inside the military for years now. Especially, we saw it with the Afghanistan war once President Obama got into office. You saw the commanders of Afghanistan coming over from their air-conditioned offices in Afghanistan and testifying on Capitol Hill and painting this rosy-colored picture of the war, how they would talk about how Afghans were leading the missions and that, you know, the US military had really taken a back seat and the Afghan military was in charge and in leadership positions. And it was anything but the truth. They were painting this picture that somehow the war was making progress when we all know it wasn't. It was a ploy to continue these forever wars, to continue to get more funding for the wars that had absolutely zero accountability. And when I mean zero, I mean zero. Trillions of dollars spent in the Middle East. Veterans coming home, you know, getting into the VA system with all sorts of issues, having to face all of that. The consequences are still ongoing. But because of that lack of culture of accountability that has only grown since the end of Afghanistan, generals have been emboldened to sort of have this two-tier justice system where they know going and testifying on Capitol Hill is just to check the block, including the Secretary of Defense, who is the leader, you know, at the top when it comes to the military. And you see him going and being smug when he's testifying on Capitol Hill, when he goes AWOL for a week and doesn't tell his boss, the commander-in-chief, that he's having surgery and is incapacitated while he's getting surgery. What kind of message does that send to the troops? The generals beneath him are like, okay, I just need to say whatever I need to say to get done with this, you know, this 3-minute conversation back and forth that I have to have with a congressman. So lack of accountability is ruining the military, and we're seeing the effects of it today.
Amber, when did that change? And I know you and I have had this discussion before, but I want people to understand this because I love World War II like every other male over the age of 40. I obsess over it, and that's just kind of what we do. And what strikes me so much is how often generals, admirals would be fired, even sometimes if they did something that honestly wasn't even their fault, they'd be fired. They would resign in humiliation. There were commanders, not that I support this in any way, many commanders killed themselves later on out of feelings of guilt for how they had failed their men, got men killed. We never see resignations now. We never see anyone fired. We never see somebody step up in front of a camera and say, that's on me, I let the troops down. So between the 1940s and now, what happened?
Yeah, in World War II, you look back and you saw generals having to perform on the battlefield. When they went to war, they had a certain, you know, they had a certain amount of time. They had a couple months, go succeed in combat. If not, you get replaced. And it wasn't personal. It was, you are there to fulfill a leadership role. If you can't do it, get out of the way because we need to bring in someone who can. If you fast forward to Vietnam, you saw a significant shift in the way the Department of Defense held leadership accountable, especially at the general, the flag officer level, where if someone was not up to par accomplishing the mission, doing their job, they sort of viewed negative, like a firing of a general, as an overall black eye, like a PR stain to the entire Department of Defense. So instead of it being to the individual holding a person accountable, they didn't want to deal with sort of the public image of it. So instead you saw them sort of circle the wagons. That's when the shuffle started, right? So, oh, we'll just move you. Instead of firing you, we'll just move you to a different position. And it'll look maybe on paper or optics like we did something, but in all actuality, that person that isn't up for the job is just moved on to a different group of people, leading a different group of people. Fast forward to today, the post 9/11 generation of generals and flag officers that we have, it is extremely rare, as you mentioned, for someone to, a general to be fired for performance or lack thereof. You may see it for personal conduct, but that's about it. And on swinging it even farther, you see these people standing by their terrible leadership, and you see other leaders protecting them. Just as we saw, I write about it in my book, how generals act on social media. which is an absolute embarrassment. And they just band together, and it's truly embarrassing for the military, sadly.
Yeah. And when they're not, acting inappropriately with their subordinates, they're from the top down focusing on diversity, of course. Here's Dome talking about it.
Our diversity is our strength, and our unity is our power as a nation.
Yeah, you can laugh about that, but the military feels the exact same way now, don't they?
Sadly, it happened faster than anyone could ever believe. And the wokeness that we have seen sort of infiltrate the U.S. military, it slid under the radar for a while because people were like, it's the military, we recruit from red states, you have these, patriotic American men and women that want to wear the uniform, serve the country, protect our freedoms, and fight for us. And so people, it was sort of unassuming. It wasn't like, what we see with the medical industry or the education system. And sadly, it was happening at the exact same time. The West Point, the military academies teaching about wokeness and white rage. And instead of focusing on battlefield strategy and leadership, they were getting woke indoctrination. And sadly, that is the next generation of military leaders. And when it's culturally like that, when it spreads culturally from not only leadership down, which is what we're seeing sort of in policies that are being set, but also, like I said, from that young generation up and the next generations of leaders. That's what, when people always ask me, how do we change this? How do we reverse this? You can change executive orders, administration to administration, SecDef to SecDef priorities. But when you sort of have the new generation of leadership who actually believe this, that is going to be an uphill battle.
Well, changing culture takes time. Amber, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's easy to kind of forget about the military. And I'm not accusing you of forgetting or disregarding it, and we all support the troops and things like that, but it's easy to forget about the importance of the military until it matters. Because it doesn't matter until it matters. What's happening right now is a slow, steady rot within the military. If Kamala Harris is elected president, that rot is going to accelerate the same way it has under Joe Biden. If anything, it'll go faster. And the stakes of that don't seem that important right now, if you're not really thinking about it. After all, it's peacetime. But one day war comes, a big one, because there's always another big one coming. One day war comes, and then it's the only thing that matters. And all that rot and all these years of peacetime ruins a nation. That may have made you uncomfortable too, but I'm right. Hope you enjoyed. We'll do it again. I would thank you for coming to my YouTube channel, but I know how brilliant it is, and I know you love it here. So subscribe and watch. We're going to start really ramping things up and putting some funny stuff, some interesting stuff out there, some collaborations. Either way, my YouTube channel is officially the place to be. So stick around.